Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy Galbreath, and I'm an associate professor with the School of Management at Curtin University. And I've been teaching on the MBA program in the city for nearly 15 years. And my main responsibility there is with the capstone unit. Many of you would have taken that. Maybe some of you took that unit with me. And I also teach on our entrepreneurship units as well as engage regularly with executive education. And I've been asked to talk about innovation, particularly about innovation in these exceptional and extraordinary times. Just by way of background, I am old enough to have been around, and I remember the 1987 crash in the United States. Of course, I was born and raised there. And also, I worked in the tech sector throughout most of the 1990s and lived through the dot-com era, lived through the dot-com crash. I lost, I think, 70% of my investments. And of course, just as I recovered from that, the GFC came along. By that time, of course, I was here in Australia. And fortunately, that was, I think, for most Australians, a relatively, I guess, for lack of a better word, soft landing. But here we are again in exceptional and extraordinary times. I'm thinking in my own lifetime, I can never remember anything quite as extraordinary and as exceptional as this coronavirus situation that we find ourselves in. But what I want to talk about is innovation. And the reality is innovation is critical to businesses, it's critical to economies, it's critical to society and societal welfare. And probably like me, many people think about innovation as the big thing. So we're always waiting for the next big technology innovation to come along. And the reality is innovation is much broader than that, of course. And I'd like to talk just very briefly about what I mean by innovation. First of all, yes, when we think about innovation, of course, we think about products. That can be maybe incremental innovation. So maybe your favorite, I don't know, your favorite crisp has a new flavor on the market. That would be considered incremental. We can think about more transformative innovation. So for example, sorry, let me grab this just a second. We can think about the iPhone, which was at the time, certainly the Apple iPhone at the time was considered transformational in that particular space and market. We can also think about radical innovation. Now, I don't think that radical innovation comes along every day. Think about the airplane. That completely and utterly transformed the world as we know it. That was certainly a radical innovation. We can also think about what is called architectural innovation. So NASA developed memory foam that was originally designed for airline passenger seats. And of course, now memory foam is used in all kinds of applications, as well as think about the microchip. The microchip is used everywhere. It's an architectural innovation. However, let's not just limit our discussion or our thought about innovation around products. We also need to think about processes. So Henry Ford's assembly line, that was a process innovation that really, I suppose, revolutionized the automotive industry. We also need to think about business models. So again, most of my professional career before I became an academic was in the tech sector in the United States. And of course, I remember when Amazon.com was born. That is and was and is and still is a business model innovation. And of course, we see things like Airbnb, Uber, those are business model innovations. So we have to think about innovation a little bit more broadly. It's not just the big, great, grand thing. It can also be process and it can also be business model. That way, regardless of whether we are in private enterprise, whether we're in government, whether we're in education, innovation is critical and it's important. In fact, I saw a report recently from the OECD, and essentially that report said that for OECD countries, about 50% of their long-term growth is attributed to their ability to innovate. So we do need to keep innovation on the front of our minds, even in the time of crisis. So I want to give you, I've just got a couple of areas that I want us to think about with respect to innovation in uncertain times, and also particularly in respect to coronavirus that we're all going through as we speak. First one is think about health, think about healthcare. That's really, I suppose, the front line these days. And I've seen recently on the ABC, and I think maybe even the SBS, some really innovative medical and healthcare related innovations that are coming to the forefront. Yes, of course, we want a vaccination, and many people around the world, of course, are innovating to try to achieve that as soon as possible. But also, I saw some interesting stories around what some other medical professions are doing to help protect healthcare workers in times of crisis like this. And I suspect that we'll see a lot of innovation coming out of that. So stay tuned to what's happening in the healthcare sector, because my suspicion is that those innovations that come out of this crisis will continue to be valuable and important contributions to society and societal welfare. The next one, of course, is government. I think we're all very well aware of governments around the world, the actions that they're taking. I remember seeing a story just the other day about Centrelink. And I think some of the ways that they're trying to innovate around, for example, their website, keeping people away from offices, out of queues. So really services and process innovation. And in times of crisis, sometimes that spurs some really innovative ideas. And I think that's happening. So again, keep your eye on the news with respect to government, what they're doing, how they respond to their customers, which of course are you and I, the taxpayer. How are they trying to make their processes more efficient, more effective, so that it simplifies how we interact with government? I think you're going to see a lot of innovation that will come from this, and also that will be long lasting. Another one, of course, is education, which is very near and dear to my own heart. If we think about higher education, tertiary education, we can think about primary, secondary education. Guess what? Everything and everybody is now going online. I personally feel that this may, in fact, lead to a new normal. That is, as we go forward, think about how much of our education will now be literally coming from an online platform. I think there's an imperative, by the way, in higher education particularly, to probably move more and more to that direction. If you look at the so-called millennial generation, I know the new generations that are coming along, there doesn't necessarily seem to be as much of an appetite or necessarily a requirement to be in a classroom or to be face-to-face. So I suspect that we will continue to see a lot of innovation rolling out in the higher education space, particularly around delivering online education. Will it be the new norm? Let's say from 2021. I don't think anybody necessarily knows that, but my suspicion is leadership at that level will be seriously looking at how can we now innovate more regularly around providing education online. And to what extent will the classroom even be necessary into the future? Time will tell. But watch that space for innovation and innovation-related activities. Another one, of course, is private enterprise. Most of us, or most of you watching this video, will probably be working in private enterprise, maybe to a lesser extent government as well. But private enterprise are being hit pretty hard, let's be honest. It's not pleasant to watch and to see that, particularly those in tourism, in restaurants, and those kinds of services businesses. But interestingly, I've seen some news stories recently where we're seeing innovation come to the forefront. I caught a news story the other day, a place that I've actually been to in Margaret River. They're a gin distillery. They are now producing hand sanitizer from this still, believe it or not. And so one of the things that I would encourage you to think about if you're in one of these sectors that are just getting hit really hard is how can I innovate so that when we come through this virus, we know that it will end. We know that we will come through it. Nobody knows how long that might take, but nonetheless, we will get there eventually. Think about how can I maybe diversify what I'm offering to my customers. Think about all of the now online activity. I saw a couple of my favorites. One is in the Swan Valley, Mandoon, which is a great place for wine and to eat and just to relax. Another one of my favorite restaurants in the city, the Heritage Wine Bar, they're now offering food hampers with fresh fruit. And by the way, Mandoon is offering with their food hampers a free toilet roll. So imagine that. So again, think about how can we innovate, particularly in these very, very hard hit sectors? How can we innovate around how we actually provide our services, our products to our customers? And that may be very much about going online. It may be very much about diversifying the portfolio, not only in times of these crises, which will help hopefully the cash flow, but also for future opportunities as well. Of course, we always need to think about diversifying our risk, and one of the ways that we can do that is to innovate. So again, watch that space, see what businesses, what private enterprise are doing to innovate around their products and services to, obviously in the current climate, to keep their doors open, to have cash flow, but also to come out of and recover well when things begin to settle down a bit. The other one, I suppose, is simply look at our own personal lives. To what extent can we in our households, with our families, with our close friends, we all are in this together. We all have to look after each other. How can we maybe innovate around our personal living? Maybe things simply around simplifying the way that we interact on a daily basis. How we think about getting to markets, how we think about acquiring what we need to live on a day-to-day basis. Ultimately, how do we help our neighbors? How do we help our families? So again, watch this space as you're watching the news. Pay attention to what families are doing, what households are doing, what neighbors are doing to innovate, to help each other out in this time of crisis. Now, the reality is, we're looking forward to when this all kind of comes to an end. I think there will be more likely a lot of permanent and long-lasting changes. But I think the key to all of this is we have to have that innovation mentality and always be thinking about how can we innovate, whether it's around a product that we offer or a service that we offer. Maybe our business models need to be reshaped or reimagined, innovated around. But ultimately, I think that innovation is a very important part of that, not only for us as individuals, not only for businesses, not only for governments, not only for healthcare, but for society as a whole, because in the end, the hope and the expectation is that through all of these innovative efforts and ideas, societal welfare will be the beneficiary. Okay, thanks everybody for listening. Take care, and I hope you're feeling well. I hope you're doing well, and look forward to seeing you soon and talking to you soon. Cheers.